O&A class. I use that as kind of a laboratory science. But I'm coming as from a different angle this morning as Coach Battenfield, not the D word. I just only use that in the classroom. But one of the things that we're going to look at today is, most of you want to be coaches, correct? It's like this is a coaching major, coaching track, you want to coach. But however, one of the things that I have embraced is the idea of the value of strength and conditioning. Primarily because it leads to so much. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times in timeouts, when I'm yelling at the guys, I'm like, you remember all that hard work we did with, used to be Bernardi, now it's with Sam. All that hard work we did, guys are lifting, this is how we beat people. And so that's essentially, it's a motivator. Primarily because I tell them, you guys will work hard in the fall and work hard in the weight room, we will beat people. And we do. We out-fitness people, we out-condition them. I don't have the greatest talent in the world. I really don't. Belmont Abbey didn't either. They really didn't. But they were well-conditioned, and they were a great team. We just could not figure those guys out 3 times this season. Excuse me. Still dealing with some sinus junk. But there's several different types of coaches when it comes to strength and conditioning. The novice. The novice does not understand what weightlifting is. Like, well, what's this? It's just go down there and do this, right? That's a novice. It doesn't understand the concept of what it's about. And so that I'm talking about a coach. You know, not the other side of strength and conditioning. You learned all that from James. But from the coaching perspective, there's a lot of coaches that don't really understand what the value of it is. But then you got the other side, you got the expert. The expert is the coach, oh, I know everything there is to know about strength and conditioning. Unless they've gone and done all those certifications and those classes that those strength guys have done, that person is not an expert. I'll tell you a story. I made the worst coaching error of my life when I hired a coach in the second year of my program. This person was an expert on strength and conditioning, right? They did not have a degree in this. This was after, I can't remember what the degree was in. But next thing I know, they're down there in the weight room with my guys telling the strength guys what to do. I'm like, I get this frantic phone call from Andre Bernardi. I remember Andre's a very large person. He was not happy. He said, this person came down to my strength room and it was doing this. And I said, okay, we'll have a meeting. And I said, in the meeting, I basically said, okay, you are not going to ever go down there again. Because that person was an expert. Now, one of my hard and fast rules is I don't go down there when they're working out. I don't. That's a torture chamber to me. I don't go in there. But it's where the work gets done. Every recruit that I've ever walked on this campus and taken in that place that likes to work out, we sign. Primarily because it's one of the best facilities in Division II. We travel all over the country seeing these things. Even the D1s don't have what we have down here. So it's a huge asset to our programs to have the knowledge we have down there and the equipment. Remember the story how we got that place? I mean, Mr. Kelly gave us $1 million to build that thing. It's a huge asset. But you can't have this expert coach going in there telling the strength guys what to do. So if you're an expert, a lot of you lift. I mean, a lot of you are in some programs where lifting is important, but you can't be that person that tells them what to do. Especially somebody like Andre's got 4 certifications from USA Weightlifting and all the other groups that do this kind of stuff. But then that's the idea of I don't believe in it, coach. You know these kind of people? Oh yeah. Well, all we need to do is play sport. Go out and bump the ball and you hit. We don't need to do weightlifting. I was one of those for a while. But I became a convert when I got back into coaching again when I got here. Because I thought, what do we need all that weightlifting stuff for? We don't need it, just jump. My philosophy was just, run up and down stairs and do a lot of plyometrics and do a lot of jumping and build, but that I learned more about because we had a lot more shoulder and back injuries because they weren't strong in the core. And so I kind of started, okay, well, that sounds good to me. But the strength people were able to convince me that was very, very important to them. Okay, I'm going to give extra credit to class here. 10 points for every question, right? Okay? How many years have I been coaching here?
Since 20. 14.
Coaching here?
14. Coaching at Northgate, how many complete seasons have I had?
6, 2015, so that's what, 7?
7. 7, Mr. Buzzard. How many Olympics have I coached in?
2.
Trick
Wait, no, you coached any, just one.
Trick question. Trick question, was that right? No, I've never coached in Olympic Games.
Media attaché.
I was a media attaché.
Yeah.
Did production and did media work. All right,
Not fair.
these are tough questions. All right, how many years have I been coaching? Total. 40.
Coaching? 23.
In the neighborhood, yeah.
26.
Extra credit.
That's correct.
I started coaching,
Boom.
back when I started playing volleyball, we didn't have club teams like they do now. So I didn't coach club. I coached the club team at Texas. When I started coaching at University of Texas San Antonio in 1984, coached 3 seasons for men's NCAA Division I volleyball. They dropped the program, kind of got out of coaching. I came back in 2013, but I didn't know anything about weightlifting. Not a thing. Like I said, I go to the yard. I'm gonna lift trees, I'm gonna dig holes. That's how I get my fitness. I need to do more. My wife's like, all right, you need a weight room. I'm like, okay, yeah, I know. I've got a weight room in my basement. I don't like it. I don't like lifting weights. However, when you're a coach, this has become a priority. But how you use the strength and conditioning people are the ones that really make a difference in the in the idea of blending the two together, because it can't be one over the other. All right, my philosophy is such that strength coaches know what they're doing, correct? They know what they're doing. They've been taught, they've gone through the classes, they know what type of lifts to do. All that equipment down there, I couldn't tell you what half that stuff does. All the bands, the band work, they know when to blend this stuff together. But don't let them impose their style on your sport. Andre used to do this with my volleyball team. Andre Bernardi is a what?
Expert.
Keep
Football
going.
player.
What type of lifting?
Football.
Football.
Power.
Football is powerlifting. Volleyball is not powerlifting. This is not powerlifting. I don't want guys that are bulked up. I used to play with a guy who was a weightlifter. The guy couldn't raise his arm above his shoulders. Volleyball, you've got to be able to reach as high as you can with your arms, flexibility, but you've got to have strength. But I get this, every time I hear the word max out, I freak out. Primarily because one of my, like I said, my greatest fear as a coach is a weightlifting injury. A season-ending weightlifting injury, knee injury, a back injury. I had one of those. One of my middles came to me, coach, I hurt my back lifting weights, missed a match. I'm like, oh, it was a loss. I'm like, so I'm very cautious about the idea of dealing with weightlifting, especially in season. I cancel a lot of workouts, primarily because we had one of those. And then you had the episode with, scooting squats before a match. You don't do that. This is volleyball's a jumping sport. Basketball's a jumping sport. If your legs are tired, you're not gonna have max lift. And so, but just trying to figure out the balance between how much do you need to do for maintenance purposes during the season, or let it go. Let it go and not do it at all. I mean, we did, I finally was able to convince Sam that we need to do more flexibility, stretching, and recovery. Recovery workouts are great, especially especially in the sport of volleyball. We played 5 games for 2 hours. Think about all the jumps that they do. Every other play, the front guys on the net are jumping. Jumping, landing, moving, coming off. Jackson Gilbert took 52 swings on Saturday. 52 swings. For a big guy, 6'6" and 200 some odd pounds, that's a lot of force, a lot of torque. He was dead. But the only reason he was able to survive is because of the workout, regimen that he went through. And so, but that's one of the things. Don't let strength people insert themselves on your sport, but understand what their value is. Okay, it's very different from football or tennis or baseball. Baseball's got a lot of the similarities because of the shoulder. We get a lot of sore shoulders and shoulder injuries, things like that. The most common injuries that we have are usually stress fractures, knees, backs, and shoulders. So we rely heavily on the strength people to strengthen that area, but the primary thing that we're interested in is the core strength. Because volleyball is a torque sport. You're doing this and snapping the ball with your core. And for, the most powerful players that you have are the ones that can torque. A lot of players try to hit like this and they don't have the speed on the ball. When I'm recruiting, the first thing I look for is jumping, second thing is arm swing. If the arm swing is extremely slow, I don't recruit those players because they're not gonna be effective. But if they have a fast arm swing, I can make them stronger. A stronger arm with a fast arm swing is the ball's gonna go awful fast. And that's essentially when I'm looking at players, I go to tournaments all over the country, and I go to these national tournaments with 50 courts out there. The one person I'm looking for is a tall player that can jump and swing, he'll swing fast. But strength and conditioning makes him better. Okay, but then again, as I said, max lifting I think is stupid in our sport. I don't need somebody squatting 350 pounds. I don't need that.
It's a weak max.
I'm sorry, I don't care. I think I can squat about 75, I'm good. But I'm an old guy, you know, I don't do that. But when I hear the word, like I said, when I hear the word max lift, I'm like, oh, this is not good.
This morning.
But I understand it. Because there is a baseline. And they have the one chart in the corner back there with the non-sports. A couple of my guys are up there. You know, I had Kyle Brandt play for me. You remember Kyle? Did you know Kyle?
Do not know Kyle.
He was second before you. He was in our second or third season.
Okay, got it.
Kyle was a football player. He was 6'6", wide receiver. Great jump. He had 3 concussions. So the trainers basically said, nope, sorry, you're done playing football. And so, you know, everybody that's 6'6" walking around a calf, I'm on them, but they play volleyball. Anybody 6'6", every basketball player is hurt by the field. You know, basketball, I coach him. But I said the same thing to Kyle. You're 6'6", come play volleyball. Ah, coach. And Destin did, what do you think he did? He walked in my office and said, Coach, I want to play volleyball. It's okay. How much have you played? I played on the beach a little bit. That's nice. So we took a 6'6" body, and turned him into a pretty decent volleyball player. He ended up in California training with professional beach volleyball players. Got hooked on the sport. But he holds the record for non-football player squats.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So Kyle, you know, he's not, you know, one of those guys who do all that stuff. So when I hear that, it's a little different. But let me just, you know, repeat what I said. Don't let the strength people dictate your team needs. Have conversations with them. It's important for coaches to have good relationships with these people. You don't want to make them mad. I invite them to practices a lot. I invite them into huddles. I used to bring Andre into the huddle at timeouts. You see that? So you see this guy right here? This guy ripped your rear end off. You know, when I turn into coach mode. But they get the idea that strength and conditioning is very, very important to us. Primarily because it wins matches in the spring when everybody else runs out of gas. We go down to Emmanuel every year. They found a way to beat us this year, but we beat them every year down there. First 2 games they play pretty good, then they'd go, because they don't work out as hard as we do. A lot of places don't have the resources that North Greenville has as far as strength and conditioning. Take advantage of it. If you don't have it, but there's other ways to do it. You know, if you go to a place that doesn't have the resources that a lot of places do, there's a lot of things you can do. You know, with lifting, I'm not an expert on that by any measure. But, you know, flipping tires and things along that, or using the hammer thing, those are easy to get. But those are ways that you build strength. You know, that's essentially what you need to learn. Okay, now when I go to a coach, pre-season, or a strength guy, pre-season, here's what I tell them. I need my guys to do 3 things. Increase their vertical jump, build their core strength, and be flexible. You see why? I gotta have these guys that are stronger, primarily because it's a sport. This is not a rinky-dinky sport where you hit the ball softly. You hit the ball extremely hard, over and over and over and over. There's one guy that the guy was player of the year in Conference Carolinas. In their last match at Mount Olive, they played Barton, and he took 66 swings. Now, just imagine that. He had to jump 66 times in a course of about an hour and 40 minutes. And that didn't include blocking, or playing defense and jumping on the floor and getting up. That's an enormous amount of exertion and energy. Without some kind of a base of conditioning and strength. That man could not do that. He's a very big guy. He's about 6'6", weighs about 210, jumps about 35 inches. He's a very, very good player. And so, increase the vertical, core strength, endurance. What's an anaerobic sport? Did you teach this one?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Put that on final exam.
An anaerobic sport?
What's an anaerobic sport?
Powerlifting.
Sport, one, yeah. But-
Give me a sport, not lifting.
Sport, what sport we have here on campus?
Golf.
Golf?
Am I mixing the two up?
Track
or am I-
and field.
It is.
Like
The shot put, track and
100-yard
field,
dash.
yeah, distance.
Track and field.
Okay, yep, track and field.
Track and field.
Short distance
Right,
events.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sprint, stop. Sprint, stop. Swimming. Sprint, stop. Volleyball is an anaerobic sport. We jump, bam, stop. You go like this for a few seconds, then you start again. That's anaerobics, not an aerobic sport where you're running 10,000 meters in a row. And so that is a different type of conditioning that is needed for my particular sport. Primarily, it's more sprints, more fast burst stuff. It stimulates different muscle groups. I do know a little about this stuff. Not much, I'm not to be dangerous, not like James. But one of the things that I emphasize, a lot more agility and stretching to prevent injury. You know, we stretch a lot, and so we need to stretch more. Guys get lazy. My players get extremely lazy as the season progresses. What usually happens? They stop stretching. Then they get injuries.
Down injuries.
And they're in the training room, and I'm like, why is my entire training team in the training room? I'm like, that doesn't make any sense at all. And so, but one of the things about stretching, don't forget, this is strength and conditioning. Conditioning, a big part of that is flexibility, is stretching, and learning to stretch properly. Now, everybody, there's any athlete that's ever been in this room knows what base camp is. Is that what it's called?
It used to be,
What's it used to be called?
ground zero.
Ground zero, thank you, ground zero. Everybody knows what ground zero is. And 2 years ago, my freshman class, they did more up downs than any other class I've ever had, because they weren't very smart. Sam would show them the right techniques, they'd do the wrong techniques. Right here, up downs. They go over and over and over, but ground zero is important. Primarily because it teaches the techniques to eliminate injury. Now I'm gonna go back to my previous remarks. Injury is something that scares coaches to death, it should. Because there's no reason for a weightlifting injury if it's done correctly. So make sure that is happening. But stretching, preparation, warm-ups are very, very important in that. So it's something that's critical. Now, like I said, the relationship between the strength coaches and the athletic trainer. Now, James can identify with this. Now, I've had this conversation with our trainer. I had guys with shoulder problems. I had guys with back problems. I had guys with hand problems. Just little nagging injuries. And I don't want a guy with a back problem going down there doing squats. That's not gonna happen. So it's important for our athletic trainer, and Andrew did a phenomenal job with this, making sure that Sam did not allow that person to do those particular exercises. That's another relationship. I spent a lot of time with our trainer because I had a lot of injuries. Not major injuries, just small, nagging, little stupid things that like, why are these things happening? But it's the nature of sports. Is there any athlete that's never had an injury? Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. I played with 2 sprained ankles at a tournament one time, taped my own ankles. It's back in the dark days of athletic training. I did. I was an athletic trainer for a while. I learned how to tape ankles. That was a long time ago.
Can you still do it?
It would take a minute, but I could probably figure out the old method with the stirrups and the figure 8 and all that stuff.
You got the terminology correct, so.
I did?
Yeah.
Wow, I still remember. I was in junior college about 100,000 years ago. But one of the things about that is prevention of injury. Prevention of injury. And that can come from the strength coach to where they're understanding the nature of the sport. If that particular person doesn't understand your sport, we're just gonna lift 5,000, 100,000, million pounds today. Then you need to ask the question, do I need to do this?
Sounds familiar.
Do I need to do, does this sound familiar? Okay. Primarily because I dealt with this with Andre.
Bernardi and Coach C were very good at making it sport, pertaining to your sport.
Well, that's because his wife was a volleyball player, so I didn't have any problem with her.
That helped.
No, it helped me a lot, because Caitlin would go, we ain't doing that.
Yeah.
And so that was good. It was when the early days of our program, that was one of the strengths that we had. Guys they were lifting a little more. They were a little heavier, but I kind of had to back it, but Caitlin backed it off, so that was a good thing. Okay, like I said, my greatest fear, a season-ending weightlifting injury. Somebody blows a knee, or somebody stretches a muscle in their back, or, or tears a muscle, doing a lift wrong. As a coach, I have to keep players in the lineup. We were a little thin this year. Had a core group of very experienced players, but I had 2 freshmen playing, and I didn't have much backup. We didn't have much depth. And so that's something as a coach you have to think about with relation to exercise and conditioning. Do we need to do more of this or more of that? Again, it goes back to the communication you have with the strength and conditioning coach. Along that particular line, what do we need to do? What has to happen here? Okay, talked about relationships, but then better yet, then teach them in your classes. I got Joe Novataski in my class, and so I taught him everything he knows. I wish. But I think everybody's heard my Novataski award, right?
Yep.
Anybody here nominated? Corey's always been nominated for the
I feel like I have.
I think you might win it this year, I'm not sure. I mean, you and Millie are neck and neck.
I'll take it.
Anybody know what the Novataski award is?
Yeah, you told us.
No, I told you. The Novataski award is for the best negotiator of the year.
Oh, come on. I'll kill Millie in negotiating skills.
You were pretty good, I'm telling you. Joe was the expert, he was the all-time winner of the Novataski award. It's an unofficial award on the back of Dr. B's door. And I have several other of those. And then Dr. Briggs is well familiar with some of them. Okay. But one of the issues that I always struggle with, especially during season, is when to back off and when to lift. When to back off and when to lift. And the players, they get whiny, like any other sport. When late in the season, they start getting tired. They start getting, they're focused on other things, like on academics, other distractions besides the sport. But one of the things you don't want to do is push them too far. Is make, go, oh, I gotta lift, really hard today. And we have a really important conference match on a Wednesday. They come in tired, they come in sore. The most important thing is to make sure they're prepared, but not overtrained. A lot of coaches, especially young coaches, here's one of the biggest errors young coaches make, is starting too fast. Starting too fast. They go out and they have a 4-hour practice the first day and they run, what happens the next day in the training room?
Yeah.
You got half the teams in here because they got nagging, they get injuries already.
Yep.
Primarily because they come back from the summer, it happens in like any sport, football, wouldn't matter. You tell them, you gotta do all these workouts with Samson's, workout regimented players. They're supposed to do it over the summer. How many of them do it?
Not many.
Probably about 20%.
About 20%.
Not
About
very many.
20%. It's about right. But young coaches get really enthusiastic the first day of practice, right? Man, that's great. We got our new gear. We're really gonna go. And then you get people hurt. You've got to discipline yourself as a coach to make sure you're working into it. Build up to it. It's the same thing in the weight room. Don't go down there and lift 500 pounds. Start with a nice, easy workout. That's what Ground Zero is about. Learning the lifts, starting easy, and building up to where that's essentially the goal is max out at the end of the semester. Because at the end of the semester, we stop in November, we got about 6 weeks before we start practicing in January, for my particular sport. It's the same for any sport. Don't get too seduced by the idea of the first day of practice and I gotta go really, really hard. Yeah, you'll know who's been lifting. It's obvious who lifted and who didn't. And there's always a couple that think, I don't need to do that, and they come in, they're not ready. And I hear it from Sam. This person hadn't done a thing over the summer. I know. But we have to make sure that they're exposed to, at least they have the opportunity. Okay, one of the things I would encourage you to know is learn as much as you can about the value of strength and conditioning. The value of it. Now that's something that'd be hard to wrap your mind around a little bit. I understand it now. I couldn't begin to tell you what all those things do. I lifted weights when I played. I didn't like it. I hated it. Like, let's get in the dang gym. I need to work on such and such a thing. But my coach understood the value of, we used to have a elastic band we would do jumps over. You got to do a lot of jumps. in basketball, and one of the things is, say, you want to learn how to jump, but do it correctly. And, that's one thing that the coaches work on. Andre was real big on this. Jumping and landing correctly, not landing on your heels, landing on the balls of your feet. Less stress on your back and your legs. This is any type of jumping sport. Has to have correct technique. It's the same in the strength and conditioning room, but the same through the motions that you do in the sport is very, very critical to preventing injury. So learn a lot about it. A lot of you that are athletes, you lift, but are really learning the differences between different sports. But it does have a value primarily because of injury prevention, building strength, and making sure that people are completely prepared to go onto the court. Now, you see me in a different light today, primarily because I'm on the other side of the fence today. As a coach, when I've got 14 players out there, I want them all trained to the highest level. That if one of my guys goes down, another one can come in. And I did that. We played Belmont Abbey on the road about a week and a half ago. One of my middles was still going through COVID protocol. If he'd have been full speed, we'd have crushed him. Because we were at that level before he went down. So I put a freshman left-hander playing middle. He did okay. He held his own. But he wasn't what we needed. But he was prepared. But a lot of the lifting and the preparations and the work that you do, all the running and jumping and all that stuff, is essentially has an incredible amount of value. So from this perspective of this course, it's important that you learn as much as you can. I'm sure James has done a great job teaching you a lot of different things about it. But it's important to know what it is. Now, the other thing is know the implements they use. There's stuff down there, I don't know what it does. That's on me. But do I really need to know that? I should. Because I take recruits in there and Sam goes, these weight blocks and these bands and these Vertimaxes, and because we use the thing, the Vertimax. Everybody knows what the Vertimax is. We use it a lot, primarily because if you're gonna jump, you gotta jump. I want guys, the higher you jump, the higher you're gonna be able to hit the ball, the higher vertical ceiling. Because in our sport, you gotta play around 10 and a half feet, 11 feet. That's 3 feet over the top of the net. That's how high guys have to get at the top level of Division I volleyball. And so I'm looking for people that can jump, primarily if they're short, like Cade McGee. Cade McGee played for me for a couple of years. He was 6'1", but he had about, well over a 30-inch vertical jump. So he played like he was 6'4", 6'5". Those are the guys I'm gonna get. I'm not gonna get the 6'8" guy from California that everybody wants. I'm not gonna recruit, I'm not gonna get him. I'm looking at a basketball player in Florida right now. I haven't played a lick of volleyball. The guy touches 11'4". He's 6'7". They get my attention? As a coach of a sport that I have to, if we had won the tournament this weekend, we'd be going up to Ohio playing Pepperdine or UC San Diego in the first round on May 6th. That's what Belmont Abbey's got to face. Their average height is 6'7", 6'8". I mean, they're large teams. They get the best players. Does that mean I have to get the best players? No. Not at all. Not the guys that are playing like that. If I get this 6'7" guy, my goal is 2 years down the road. Two years from now, he might be one of the best players in the country. Brandon Baker. Everybody knows Brandon. Brandon is a phenomenal athlete. We started out as an outside hitter because of injuries. We moved him into the middle. Guy can jump as well as anybody in the conference in any position. But we've trained him and built him into one of the best middles in our conference. That's our philosophy, but a lot of it goes back to conditioning and the ability to transition into other roles. So that was an important concept for us. All right, but here's the last thing. Let the trainers and the conditioning coaches do their jobs. Let them do their job. Don't interfere. Like I talked about the coach that went down there. And some of the coaches go in there with the teams. That's their prerogative. If they want to go in there with their teams and watch their teams work out, that's their choice. I don't do it. Oh, by the way, I have another job on the other side of the fence here. I'm trying to figure out, how to torture you guys on tests and all that kind of stuff. So that I'm a little bit, I'm an anomaly here at North Greenville because I am doing over here, but I'm also over here learning to balance the two. One of the balances is while they're in the weight room, I'm in my office figuring out grades and assignments and things like that. So it's learning to juggle all the two different things, but I can't deny one or the other. I have to make sure that I'm staying on top of my guys. because we are one of the top teams in the country. We moved into the top 20 in the Power Rating Index for the first time this season, as far as the strength of schedule, because we played an extremely strong regional schedule against some of the top teams in the South. We beat almost every one of them, except Belmont had a good bigger than them. But that's what, when you're from a coaching perspective, my goal is to put as many good athletes on that court. It's the best, most athletic team we've ever had, that I've ever recruited. And then when you get to that point, then you're finally gonna be able to make the step to the next level. But it all really comes back down to the ability to train. Because we got the worst volleyball gym in the United States, period, bar none. There is none worse than that. But it's also home court advantage. Our winning percentage in there in the last 7 years is about 85%. Nobody, I tell people, nobody beats us in there. If they do, it's an unusual occurrence. But when you've got to play, you still have to go out and perform. You can't just show up and assume that people are gonna bounce balls off the beams all day. Some teams have figured it out. And so we've gotta remember, the relationship you have with the trainers is very, very, I would say the trainers, strength trainers, is very critical to your team and preparing them for athletic competition. Because of injury prevention, building strength, and maximizing performance. Okay? All right, any questions? Specific type of questions related to my sport, what I do, my relationship to athletic trainers. I say athletic trainers. That's important. That's a whole other class. But, I rely on our trainers a lot. I appreciate James for his leadership, primarily because we went through a really difficult year with every one of you. So I say that publicly. And James did a phenomenal job guiding us through something that was really, really difficult. With all the COVID issues and trying to keep everybody safe. And so, but that's another side of conditioning that, okay, Emmanuel Adamas, he had to go through a complete rebuild after shutting down for 2.5 weeks. But the trainer, Andrea, made sure that he was coming along at the right pace, did the right amount of work, so we didn't have any permanent injury from COVID. In fact, I was talking to Kristen Emery yesterday. She still has some side effects from COVID from the fall. She was by my office yesterday.
She back?
Yeah, she's back. And she told me some interesting stories. I'll share them with you later. All right, any questions?
Can you tell us, how do you communicate your outcome desires to strength staff?
At the beginning of the year, I basically sit down with them and I say, okay, like I said, my three values, flexibility, core strength, and vertical. Those are the three things that are important to me. Those are large generic categories. But how do you increase vertical jump? You jump. But there are certain lifts you can do as well. We used to have a thing called, what was that thing called? Put it on your shoulders and go like this. Jump Master. Remember that one?
Oh, we got new machines when I got here.
Yeah, this is an old machine. Well, we had this guy when I was at UTSA, the guy named Robert Wallace. Robert was about 6 foot tall, weighed about 165 pounds. Dude could touch top square. Literally. He ended up with the Harlem Globetrotters as their dunker. He's a little skinny guy. But Robert could really jump. I said, he used to get on this thing and just go over and over and over. It was the thing he went down, it was like squats, basically. But you've got to have those kind of machines and that kind of training to maximize that. But it really goes back down to communication. If you just tell the strength guy, just get him ready, is that good enough? No. Football players, what do you have to tell football coaches, or tell that particular person for football players? Get them bigger, stronger, quicker, eliminate injury. When I was working at Texas A&M, one of our benefits that we had as a staff member there was eating in the athletic dining hall. Oh man, that was bad. It was very bad. I gained 10 pounds the first 3 months I was there. Because you walk in there, and it was thing went like this. What's in the first case here? Dessert. They had it from about here to there, everything you wanted. And I'm a sugar freak. But once I started working, I stopped playing volleyball. And traveling to basketball, eating pregame meals, like no exercise. Big mistake. Well, you're eating a lot more calories, you're lifting a lot more, you're gonna build bulk. throwing some of that creatine stuff, and everything's good. But that's a whole different type of sport. How about track and field? Do they need to max lift?
Oh, for sure.
Definitely not. Definitely not. They have different needs. They're jumpers, they're high jumpers, long jumpers, triple jumpers. They have the same type of weightlifting regimen that we would use. Long distance runners, do they need to do max weights? No. Excuse me. They would have a completely different thing. So it's a lot of study in having that conversation with the strength person early in the year that says, this is our goal. From here's the start in August, here's the finish in May. What's that 8, 9 month period look like? Because it's going to look like this. Primarily because we want to get to where in November we're max lifting. Everything that we've done by then, they need to be lifting more weights. There needs to be some sort of progression when they get to that point. Then we come back, we start our season, well, yeah, then it slides off. It's a huge bell curve. Because by the time you get to this time of the year, let's say we'd have won this weekend, yeah, we would do some lifting the next couple of weeks, but it wouldn't be anything heavy. Because we don't need that. We need maintenance. We need light weights. One of the things that I would always emphasize was light weights, max reps. It builds a different type of muscle. Fast twitch muscle reflex. Yeah, that's all I can remember from my primitive classes from a million years ago. James is way more of an expert in this. But that relationship is very, very important. Very, very critical. Great question. Anybody else? All right. Well, I
Coach,
appreciate it.
I got one more, Coach.
Yeah, sure.
Can you tell us, what is your position on supplements and steroids and fat burners and thermogenic aids in regards to your sport and your athletes?
Great question. I've got a guy on my team named Luke Dinsmore. Luke's about 6 foot tall. He's very small. He weighs about maybe 170. He's the best athlete on the team. But he's only 6 foot tall. This is a big man's game. The teams that win have people that are 6'8" to 6'10".
Growth hormone.
He's 6 foot tall. So I'm always joking, Luke, you need to take steroids. I'm joking. Disclaimer, disclaimer. But if that guy could get big, oh, okay, maybe I can do that. He could get up to about 6'4", 6'5", he'd be an All-American. He's one of the best athletes we have. Skill-wise, he beats the ball. He beats my big guys. He hits the ball around Jackson Gilbert every day. I'm like, dang, I need to find a way to get this guy in the lineup. But he's not big enough to block the bigger players. And so supplements, it's one of those things that I really can't wrap my head around very much. Because I know we do the muscle milk and all that stuff down in the training room down there, but I really don't really have an opinion one way or the other. Obviously anabolic steroids are not good. You do that, and then the NCAA has a banned list of things that you can't take. Because, we don't drug test as much as the D1 teams, but you make the tournament, you're subject to drug testing. You decide you're gonna try that, and then, you get your team disqualified. You don't wanna do that. So, but it goes back to athletic training. Athletic trainers communicate this stuff to the athletes, to the coaches, of what we can and can't do. And so I'm kinda ambiguous about it because I really don't see that as a possibility. But, because we're not a bulk sport. Since we're not a bulk sport, I don't need guys getting, weighing 30, 40 pounds heavier. All that would do is take away from the vertical jump. Matt McManaway, for example. His freshman year, he came in here, he's one of the best middle blockers in the country, period, any level. He had an amazing year. Came back 30, 40 pounds heavy his sophomore year. He was awful. He was terrible. He had these chubby cheeks, he was fat. He never got in shape. He just didn't bother to do anything over the summer. He had a terrible year. Didn't even make all conference that year. The best player I've ever had here next to Jackson Gilbert. And so he understood that the value of working out and lifting was critical. When he came back his junior year, he made second team all conference. He was that good. He's the best blocker I've ever seen. And so when it comes down to that, are supplements good? Well, there are some things that help, generate energy, help rehabilitation and injury, things along that line. But when you start getting into the stuff that's on the borderlines, you gotta be very, very careful. Yeah. Another good one. Questions? All right.
One last thought. So if you were to go into the championships, into the tournament, and I don't know how long that lasts, is that a week or 2 weeks?
About about 3 or 4 days.
And so,
Not
would you
really.
take a strength coach with you, or
I
would
would
you
love to.
avoid some of that, during the tournament?
A lot of, like the football teams that use the strength guide to do preseason, pre-match, pre-game warm-ups. I don't know of many volleyball teams that do that because they're limited on budgets. But I would, to me, one of the things, the most critical things we need, an athletic trainer, strength and conditioning, and a sports psychologist. I would love to have a sports psychologist for our teams. I really would. I mean, primarily because how many times have I do this to my players when we're playing? Physically, we're good as anybody in the country, period. But mentally, we're not there. We're not there. We had lapses. We were terrible on Saturday. Terrible. We played one of the worst matches we had, and we still had a chance to win it because we're that good athletically. But mentally, we were deficient. And so those are the 3 things I would really love to see strengthen, be the area of sports psychology. But yeah, take a trainer along, I would, a strength person along, I would love to do that. Primarily because they have a way of refocusing a little different than we do. Different relationship. Because when you go in there, you know what you're gonna get, right? It's high energy, there's no messing around, there's no goofing around. Because again, as coaches, you're with them all the time, they're kind of like your kids. You don't kick them all the time. You gotta stroke them a little bit, you gotta be nice to them, you gotta joke around with them. Sam and Seth and all the guys down there in that place, and Joe, they don't mess around. It's business, which is good. And so you get a different type of workout environment that you would in practice. Because I'm with them 5 days a week for 2 hours a night, and then we're playing matches, we're traveling. I have to have a different relationship with them. Primarily because I want to keep them relaxed. I don't want them to be in fear of me as a coach. Because that's my own coaching philosophy. I delegate a lot of the training to my assistants. Primarily because I can't swing anymore. I got a bad shoulder. If I could swing, I could swing. And when I was training, I could hit a volleyball as hard as anybody. Primarily because I do technique. But you have to balance the need for using those type of people to do their jobs the correct way.
And one thing too with the strength training, outside you say you spend a lot of time with them, outside of your regulated practices and stuff, the strength coach, they're the person that team they're gonna spend the second most time with. And if they're hurt, then they come see me, but other than that, the coach and the strength coach, they're gonna spend all the time with those 2 people.
It's
It's very
exactly
important to, have someone good.
Yeah, they become a big part of your life. They really do. Primarily because, you're in there probably at least 3 hours a week. And that's a lot of time where they're influencing what you do as an athlete. And that's critical for me as a coach. Because that time is so important for all the things that I talked about, injury prevention, flexibility, strength, core strength, that builds a better volleyball player. Because like I said, I want guys that can jump, they're flexible, they don't get hurt. We played, 17 matches this year? We haven't had a major injury in 3 or 4 years. We pray for that every day. We don't want knee injuries, we don't want back injuries, I don't want to lose players. We haven't lost a guy to a knee injury since 2017. That was just a fluke accident with Connor Ryan. He blew his knee if we were playing at Princeton. That was just a freak injury. But through the efforts of the strength and conditioning people, we've been extremely fortunate. And we have had injuries. I mean, Jackson Gilbert likes to break things. He really does. He broke both his pinkies. Dislocated both of them. I don't know how you do that. It's the weirdest injuries I've ever seen. Dislocated this one.
Did one with me.
That one, yeah, you were there. I mean, weird injuries. But when you get the real serious ones, the strength people are the ones that prevent the serious injuries. That's a great observation. They do spend a lot of time with your team. So you have to have the confidence that they'll be able to train them the correct way, the way you want them trained. Okay, any other questions? Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dr. B.
Thanks for
You guys have a little different,
Appreciate
a little different light, and a little different way to look at how training should be done, so I appreciate it. Okay, see everybody tomorrow.